When two security guards demanded that Marcus Freeman, a black Marine, leave his son's graduation ceremony, the entire auditorium held its breath. In Marcus's steadfast gaze burned a promise to his late wife, to never miss Jordan's moment of pride. But as tension escalated, 6 Navy SEALs unexpectedly rose from the crowd, silently commanding the room. This is a story of loyalty, dignity, and the power of silence in the face of injustice. You won't want to miss the moment that set the auditorium ablaze. Come, let's dive in. Under the blazing June sun, Marcus Freeman, a former Marine, pulled his glossy black Ford Mustang to the curb of the parking lot at Bayside High School, Virginia. His Marine uniform hugged his sturdy frame, polished boots gleaming like mirrors, not for show but because that was Marcus's way, never half-hearted in anything. He gently touched his pocket, where a worn photograph rested, a cherished keepsake of his late wife, Alicia, cradling their son, Jordan, as a baby. 10 hours of driving from the military base in North Carolina had left his shoulders aching, but Marcus's gaze remained unwavering. He was here to honor Alicia's promise, to never miss Jordan, now 18, walking across the stage to receive his diploma. The parking lot buzzed with pickup trucks laden with balloons and signs proclaiming, "Congrats, class of 2025. Families gathered near the gym's entrance, where the air of the graduation ceremony brimmed with laughter, children's chatter, and tearful embraces. An elderly woman leaning on a cane, beaming brightly, stood beside a girl holding a glittering sign with her sibling's name. Marcus stepped past them, each stride steady, carrying the weight of a vow. He wasn't just a father attending a ceremony. He was a warrior who had faced life's darkest corners, from the deserts of Iraq to sleepless nights after Alicia's passing from illness 2 years ago. Bayside's gymnasium glowed with silver light from banners hung high, the words "Class of 2025" sparkling against a green backdrop. Plastic chairs filled the bleachers, dotted with eager faces of parents, siblings, and friends. The scent of floor wax mingled with faint traces of popcorn, creating a space both familiar and solemn. Marcus handed his printed ticket to a volunteer at the door, a middle-aged woman with a clipboard and a hurried smile. She nodded, pointing to the 4th row on the right, reserved for graduates' families. He walked on, his eyes scanning the crowd, noting fleeting glances, some curious, some wary, but Marcus was used to them. As a tall black man in a Marine uniform, he understood those looks, whatever they meant. He found his seat, the plastic chair creaking under his weight. Marcus sat down, posture erect, hands resting lightly on his thighs, eyes fixed on the stage. Somewhere in the line of students in black robes, Jordan stood, tall and lanky with his mother's radiant smile. Marcus didn't move, but his chest swelled with an emotion hard to name, a blend of pride and lingering pain. He recalled the night Jordan was born, when he flew back from Iraq, the smell of battlefield dust still on his hands, cradling his tiny son in Alicia's arms. Now, 18 years later, that boy was about to step into a new chapter of life. The photograph in his pocket felt like a living reminder. Alicia, with her warm smile, had once said, "Don't let Jordan grow up without his father at the moments that matter." Marcus had carried that photo through long days in war, through lonely nights after her passing. It wasn't just a keepsake, it was the fire that kept him steadfast. Today, he was here to honor that promise, to witness his son cross the stage, carrying the love of a mother now gone. But as he sat there, focused on the line of students in the distance, a cold breeze seemed to pass through, as if fate was preparing to test him. What awaited Marcus in this room, where pride and injustice were about to collide? As the final note of the national anthem echoed through Bayside's gymnasium, an invisible wave of tension sliced through the festive air of the graduation ceremony. Marcus Freeman, still seated steadfastly on his plastic chair, sensed the shift before it took shape. 2 security guards, clad in black polo shirts with name tags reading Carter and Hayes, strode down the aisle, their eyes locked on him as if he were a problem to be fixed. Carter, short and broad-shouldered, led with a rigid expression, while Hayes, tall and lanky, chewed gum with blatant impatience. They halted beside Marcus, their figures blocking the shimmering light from the banners above the stage. The auditorium buzzed with life, the rustle of printed programs, a child's laughter, and the whispers of parents blending into a vibrant symphony. But for Marcus, the world narrowed to the fourth row, where he sat, and the two men before him. Carter leaned forward, his cold voice cutting through, demanding he leave the section reserved for graduates' families, claiming it was full, despite empty chairs nearby. Marcus, with the calm forged in years of battle, slowly drew a printed ticket from his pocket, his fingers brushing the photograph of Alicia and Jordan tucked inside. He held the ticket up, his gaze unwavering, asserting his right to stay. Marcus's resolve, unyielding as a rock, seemed to unsettle Carter. He ignored the ticket, repeating his demand with a sharper tone, as if Marcus's presence were an affront. Hayes, behind him, shifted his feet restlessly, his hand hovering near the radio on his belt, as if ready to call for backup. Marcus didn't flinch, his chest swelling with an emotion hard to name, not anger, but the icy patience of a man who had faced far greater trials. He was no stranger to skeptical glances or veiled whispers, from small-town streets to distant military bases. But today, he wasn't here to argue or prove himself. He was here for Jordan, for Alicia's promise, for the moment their family had awaited. The auditorium began to notice the anomaly. A mother 2 rows away whispered to her husband, her eyes darting to Marcus with concern. A teenager raised a phone, its lens silently capturing the scene. An elderly woman, her hand trembling on her cane, tilted her head, trying to grasp what was unfolding. The joyful atmosphere of the graduation, once brimming with celebration, now lay under a shadow of stifling tension. Carter, sensing the crowd's attention, straightened up, his voice tinged with arrogance, as if he held control. But Marcus, with shoulders squared and eyes sharp as a blade, let those words slide off him. He knew the cost of dignity, the price of standing firm against injustice, and he had learned to hold his silence when it mattered. The photograph in his pocket seemed to grow heavier, a reminder of what was worth defending. Marcus thought of Alicia, her smile when Jordan took his first steps, the letters she sent him during long months in Iraq. Today, he stood not just for himself, but for her, for their family. The aggression of Carter and Hayes was nothing new. It was an old shadow, a challenge Marcus had faced too many times. But as Carter's hand moved toward his belt, as if preparing to act, a current of electricity surged through the auditorium. The crowd held its breath, sensing a boundary about to be crossed. Would Marcus stand firm against this pressure, or was something greater about to erupt? As Carter's hand hovered near his belt, a cold breeze seemed to sweep through Bayside's gymnasium, freezing the festive air of the graduation ceremony. Marcus Freeman, still seated motionless like a rock amidst a storm, sensed the shift before it took form. From the corners of the auditorium, 6 figures quietly rose, without uniforms or badges, yet carrying the aura of warriors who had walked the line between life and death. They were Navy SEALs, men who had fought alongside Marcus in the smoke and fire of Iraq, now emerging like ghosts from the past, ready to shield their old comrade. Leading them was John Carver, tall with salt and pepper hair and eyes sharp as steel, stepping out from the left row of seats. His posture was unassuming, yet each step bore the weight of a man who had faced death without flinching. Diego Alvarez, with a chiseled face and broad shoulders, rose from the back, his gaze sweeping the room like an eagle hunting prey. The other 4, Lucas Hayes, Ethan Cole, Ryan Baxter, and Samuel Ortiz, stood up from different corners, not in unison, not overtly coordinated, but their presence formed an invisible circle, enveloping Marcus in silent protection. The auditorium, once humming with murmurs, fell into a hush, as if every breath was held. Carter, his hand still lingering near his radio, stepped back slightly, his eyes flickering between Marcus and the unfamiliar men. Hayes, the lanky guard, stopped chewing his gum, his face betraying confusion. Their initial aggression dissolved, replaced by unease before the overwhelming presence of the 6 SEALs. Marcus, still upright, didn't turn to look. He didn't need to. He knew exactly who they were, men he had led through dusty, blood-soaked roads, men who had sworn never to forget. The photograph of Alicia in his pocket seemed to warm, as if she too felt the loyalty quietly rising around him. The audience began to sense something extraordinary. A father nearby stopped flipping through the graduation program, his eyes fixed on Carver. A young girl, phone still raised to record, whispered to her friend, her voice trembling. A teacher near the stage, clutching a microphone, paused her checklist, her gaze drifting to Marcus and the silent men. The SEAL's silence wasn't an absence of sound, it was a declaration, a power that needed no words to assert itself. They didn't stand there to intimidate, but to remind everyone that some bonds run deeper than any rule in a gymnasium. In Marcus's mind, a memory flashed the blazing afternoon in Mosul, when he pulled Carver from rubble, when he lifted a chunk of engine to free Alvarez. Those days had forged an unspoken vow, a loyalty that transcended time and space. Now, in this room bathed in silver light and sporadic applause, that vow came alive, not through gunfire but through unyielding presence. Carter, realizing he was outmatched, lowered his hand from his belt, his eyes avoiding contact. Hayes stepped back, his feet moving clumsily, as if he wanted to retreat but didn't know how. The air in the auditorium grew heavy, not with fear, but with a spreading reverence. An elderly woman nearby, her hand gripping her cane, nodded slightly to Marcus, as if she understood the weight of this moment. Marcus, his eyes still fixed on the stage, felt Jordan's presence somewhere among the students. He wasn't here to cause a scene, he was here to see his son step into the future. But as the 6 SEALs stood firm around him, the room realized they weren't just protecting a father, they were guarding a dignity that could not be violated. Would the SEALs' silence be enough to quell this injustice? Or was something greater about to unfold? Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. In the moment the 6 Navy SEALs stood up, Bayside's gymnasium seemed to hold its breath, but Marcus Freeman's mind drifted back to a searing afternoon in Mosul, Iraq, in 2009. Under a scorching sun, with dust swirling like sharp blades, he, a Marine sergeant, led a patrol down a narrow road. The air was heavy, as if war lurked in every grain of sand. When a roadside bomb detonated, tearing apart the lead Humvee, Marcus's world plunged into chaos. Black smoke billowed, metal screeched, and gunfire roared like a deadly symphony. Marcus, with instincts honed through brutal months, charged into the hail of bullets without hesitation. He slid into a ditch, his eyes scanning the burning wreckage where 6 SEALs were trapped on the edge of life and death. John Carver, blood streaming down his temple, crawled through the sand, dragging a wounded comrade. Diego Alvarez, his leg pinned under a 200-pound engine fragment, lay motionless in pain. Lucas Hayes, Ethan Cole, Ryan Baxter, and Samuel Ortiz, each trapped, their eyes not filled with fear but with resolve, as if they trusted someone would come. And Marcus, with Alicia and Jordan's photograph in his pocket, knew it had to be him. Without waiting for orders or calling for support, Marcus sprinted across 300 meters of dusty ground, bullets whizzing around him like angry bees. He grabbed Carver's harness, pulling him across open terrain, each step a defiance of fate. Once Carver was safe behind a crumbled wall, Marcus turned back, his chest heaving, his gaze unflinching. He slid to Alvarez's side, kneeling beside the twisted engine fragment, his strong hands gripping its scorching edge. His shoulders strained, his ribs ached, but he gritted his teeth, summoning every ounce of strength to lift the steel, enough for Alvarez to free his leg. Every second was a battle, every breath a promise. The other 4 SEALs, though wounded, clutched their rifles, firing back to cover Marcus. He didn't stop, dragging each man to safety, his body trembling with adrenaline but his mind razor-sharp. When the dust settled and medics arrived, all 6 men were still breathing, blood and smoke clinging to their faces. There were no cheers, no victory speeches. Only the locked gazes between Marcus and the SEALs, an unspoken vow etched into the sand and blood of Mosul. They made no promises aloud, but those eyes swore they would never forget a loyalty stronger than war, deeper than time. Back in Bayside's gymnasium, the presence of the 6 SEALs stood as a living testament to that vow. Marcus, still motionless on his plastic chair, felt the weight of Alicia's photograph in his pocket, as if she stood beside him, witnessing a brotherhood that never faded. The SEALs weren't there to boast. They stood to protect a father, a warrior, a man who had risked his life to save theirs. Carter and Hayes, the 2 security guards, now stepped back, their eyes wavering before the SEALs' silent dominance. The auditorium, once tense, now brimmed with quiet reverence, as if everyone felt the gravity of this moment. A mother nearby stopped whispering, her hand clutching her husband's, her eyes fixed on Marcus with understanding. A student, phone still raised, paused recording to stare at the SEALs, as if realizing this was more than a confrontation, it was a greater story. Marcus, with shoulders squared and eyes on the stage, didn't need to look back to know the SEALs were there for him, for Jordan, for a dignity that could not be stolen. Their silence was a proclamation, a reminder that some bonds never break. But would this presence be enough to extinguish the injustice, or was a greater moment waiting to unfold? When Jordan Freeman's name rang out from the loudspeaker, Bayside's gymnasium transformed into an ocean of emotion, waves crashing from the stifling silence. Marcus Freeman, still seated motionless on his plastic chair, felt his heart pound, as if its rhythm merged with the call of his son's name. 6 Navy SEALs, standing tall like pines in a storm, clapped in unison, their sharp, powerful sound like a war drum's beat, igniting the auditorium into an eruption of cheers. The roar spread, not just celebrating a graduate, but proclaiming that Marcus's dignity, as a father and a warrior, could not be stolen. Jordan, lanky in his shimmering black robe, stepped onto the stage with eyes aglow, mirroring his mother, Alicia, in her happiest days. Light from the banners above cast a halo around him, as if fate itself were honoring this moment. Jordan walked, not with arrogance, but with a quiet confidence, as if he felt the weight of his father's gaze from the 4th row. Marcus, with shoulders squared and a face nearly expressionless, let a small smile bloom on his lips, a smile holding both pride and the ache of years gone by. In that moment, he saw Alicia in Jordan, in the tilt of his head, in the sparkle of his eyes. The auditorium, once taut with the tension of the standoff with 2 security guards, now became a sea of united souls. A mother nearby, still clutching her husband's hand, wiped tears, as if this moment touched a deep part of her heart. A student, lowering his phone, forgot to record and clap to the SEAL's rhythm. A teacher by the stage, gripping her microphone, smiled as if she had witnessed something greater than a graduation. Carter and Hayes, the 2 guards, stood back near the door, their eyes averted, as if they knew they were defeated by a force beyond their authority. The SEAL's presence was more than protection. It was a declaration of loyalty and dignity, a reminder that those who had walked through battle would never leave a comrade alone. Marcus, though still seated, felt the weight of Alicia's photograph in his pocket, as if she were there, witnessing their son's moment of honor. He recalled long nights in Iraq, clutching that photo under the desert moonlight, vowing to Alicia that Jordan would grow up in love and resilience. Today, he had kept that promise, not just by being present, but by standing firm against injustice, surrounded by men he once saved. The applause thundered on, echoing like a chorus of recognition. Jordan, standing on the stage, diploma in hand, sought his father's eyes in the crowd. When their gazes met, no words or grand gestures were needed. Marcus's smile, small but profound, said it all, that he was proud, that he had fought for this moment, not just for himself, but for Alicia. The auditorium, sensing the invisible bond between father and son, kept cheering, the applause a testament that no one, No injustice could steal this sacred moment. In the silver light of the gymnasium, Marcus felt a rare peace. He didn't need to stand or speak. The SEAL's presence, the crowd's applause, and Jordan's gaze spoke for him. This was not just Jordan's victory, but the triumph of a father, a warrior, over life's trials. Yet as Jordan stepped down from the stage, a quiet question lingered in the air, like an unfinished melody. Would this moment close the story, or was a deeper lesson waiting to unfold? As the golden glow of dusk bathed the parking lot of Bayside High School, Marcus Freeman and his son Jordan stood beside the glossy black Ford Mustang, where sweat and memories intertwined. The applause from the gymnasium still echoed in their minds, but now, in the quiet of the parking lot, only the soft breeze and the rhythm of their breaths remained. Marcus, still in his Marine uniform, polished boots gleaming under the sunset, felt Alicia's photograph in his pocket, like a small flame warming his chest. The moment Jordan crossed the stage had closed one chapter, but the story of dignity and loyalty still waited to be told. Jordan, lanky with his mother's eyes, leaned against the car, his gaze sparkling with curiosity and respect. He looked at his father, a man who had faced injustice without raising his voice or fist. Marcus's silence in the gymnasium, shielded by 6 Navy SEALs, had left a profound mark on the boy. Marcus, catching that look, drew the worn photograph from his pocket, its frayed edges telling of days he carried it through Iraq's deserts. The image Alicia cradling a young Jordan, her smile radiant as sunlight, had been his guiding light through long nights of war and the years of loss after her passing. The parking lot was now still, with only a few families trickling away, glittering balloons drifting in the breeze. Marcus stood tall, his shoulders bearing a warrior's weight, but his eyes softened as they met Jordan's. He needed no grand words. His presence, his steadfastness before 2 security guards, and the SEAL's arrival had taught Jordan a lesson deeper than any lecture. He recalled Mosul, dragging John Carver through gunfire, lifting an engine fragment to free Diego Alvarez. Those moments were not just heroic acts. They were proof that loyalty is an invisible thread, binding those willing to sacrifice for one another. Jordan, hands in pockets, tilted his head, as if trying to grasp his father's quiet strength. Marcus, with a low but steady voice, shared a truth learned from battlefields and life. Dignity lies not in anger or argument, but in resolve and faith in what is right. He spoke of Alicia, how she taught him that a true man doesn't need to shout to be heard or stand to be seen. The SEALs, rising from the crowd, were living proof of that lesson. They needed no words to defend him. Their presence was enough. In the distance, the 6 silhouettes of John Carver, Diego Alvarez, and the others appeared against the sunset, standing near a pickup truck, waving gently to Marcus. There were no loud farewells, no showy embraces, just a quiet gesture, like their rise in the auditorium, proclaiming a brotherhood that would never fade. Marcus nodded back, a wordless understanding. As he and Jordan climbed into the Mustang, the engine's roar sounded like a final declaration, carrying them away from Bayside, yet their story lingered. The audience, if watching, would feel the weight of this moment, not just a father's triumph over injustice, but a lesson in living with dignity and loyalty. Marcus taught not only Jordan but all who witnessed that silence can be stronger than a shout, and camaraderie can overcome any challenge. As the Mustang vanished into the sunset, a quiet question hung in the air, inviting reflection. How would you stand up when faced with injustice in your own life?